I wanted to say, just as a very brief introduction, where the name of this meeting is coming from, Navigating the Bardo. I wrote something about a year and a half ago. It's in a book of journeys, which are journeys to different lands, like Peru and Mexico and different countries in Asia, but it's really inner journeys. And some of these journeys were psychedelic journeys. And Navigating the Bardo is the first one in which I recount an experience that I had in an ayahuasca journey, in an ayahuasca experience, in which I felt that I was dissolving. And in this journey, I saw that there are different stages, and that the death experience itself goes through different stages of recapitulation, a life review, coming face to face with the worst fear or the complete loss, which is the dissolution of the personal self, and then falling into a kind of timeless eternity in which everything is just passing through this vast space. So what I wanted to do is to discuss this with a group, because Georgia and I have been talking a lot about this during the last 2 weeks. So the idea was to share our experiences, to share my experience in this journey, if it is helpful for others, but also to receive feedback, because especially for those of us that are used to doing workshops and teaching, often the information is one directional. So the idea was to create this as an open forum and to talk about this fundamental experience, which is an experience of coming face to face with your worst fears and actually pushing in and going to the limit of that and waiting for it to transform. So I think that is enough as an introduction. And I just wanted to say, of course, this is not specific to psychedelic journeys. Many people have similar experiences in breathwork and in meditations. And what I would like to do is to ask everybody who has joined so far, and it's a small number compared to all of those that have signed up, to just say your name, where you're from, and why you're here, what actually has brought you to this encounter. And keep it short, like under 1 minute. And just unmute your microphones and go as you feel.
I guess I'll go first. So I'm Mihai, I'm from Bucharest, but I live in Brașov, Romania. I just saw and wanted to meet you, Joanne, for a long time. I saw your previous, organized by you, previous events, and I never got to attend any of them. So I wanted to meet you, and it's also a pleasure to see George again. And yeah, it sounds like an interesting topic. I don't know how much I have to say about it, but I'm sure interested to listen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go second. Hi, I'm Alexandra. I live in Bucharest, and I'm here because over the past years, I interacted a lot with Joanne, and I feel her close to my heart, and I'm interested in this topic as well.
All right, I'll take a turn, I guess. I'm Sam, and I'm from Michigan in the US, and I'm super excited about this. So I don't know very much what I'm getting into, but I'm a knowledge seeker, I guess, but I'm looking to transition into experience. And so that's, I'm just thrilled to be here and listen to Joanne's experience, and we got introduced through a mutual acquaintance, I guess. And I thought that her experience was pretty incredible. And so that's what I'm doing here. So thanks for doing this, Joanne.
Manuela wrote on the chat. She said that she's from Cluj and on her way to Bucharest, and this is her life theme, the border from life to death.
Hi, can I go next?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm from Bucharest, but in this very moment, I am somewhere in the countryside in Argeș, which is beautiful. And yeah, I'm definitely interested in this topic. I think it tends to, in our culture today, to slip under the carpet, and we tend to avoid, and I have the impression it is important to look at it. And yeah, I was also looking for the opportunity to see Joanne and Georgia again. So glad to be here.
I follow Georgie everywhere. So that's why I'm here. Even in the Bardo, I'll be there. In his transition, I'll be listening to what's going on or something. I don't know.
No pressure, George.
So I think everybody who has joined the room has spoken until
No,
now.
I'm Laura.
Ah, no, sorry.
I'm Laura. I'm from Bucharest. I interested about this topic because I read this book. I don't know if you know it. This is a Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist monk who describes his experience near death, and it's a very beautiful book. And after I read it, I think it's very important to understand much more about this subject. It's very, very interesting. And I'm glad to meet you, Joanna, and Georgia, of course. Thank you.
So Georgia, I forgot did you want to give the how the setup will work before we do our own reflections or after? Your microphone is muted.
To talk about the container, and then we can do our stuff, so that we're look forward to. As you may have guessed from the description, this is not just a monologue where Joanne or I present some ideas. The context of this is sort of a meditation and dialogue. At least that's the way we look at it. So what does it mean? It means that yeah, we will present some ideas. We'll throw out some ideas out there based on our own experiences and knowing. And after which, we will open up the space to the group, where everyone will have a chance to share their reactions and share their reflections and share their feelings, shared feelings. But the way it's going to be done is as if it's a meditation. So it's not a group discussion. It's not going to be a question and answer session. The focus is on what each one of us is feeling in that particular moment. Like what comes up from these ideas, or what comes up from our own personal space, what needs to be expressed. And what makes it meditative is the fact that interrupt the others. So each one has roughly 2, 3, 4 minutes to speak. Could be more, could be less, depending on what comes up. And the speaking is always done through the prism of listening. So we're listening to ourselves communicate, we're listening to ourselves open up to the group. At the same time, we're listening to the others. So it's kind of intentional speech where I'm quite careful of the intention with which I share, and I'm quite attentive to the essence of because in this kind of a shared space, speech becomes quite powerful, especially when there's a number of persons who focus their attention on the speaker. I call it conscious dialogue. We'll see how it works. I think Laura already knows how this practice develops. It could be quite interesting. So what we ask is that once we've finished with a short presentation, if you want to speak, when you want to speak, you unmute yourself. And then you share what you want to share. Again, it's not a question and answer session, and it's not some sort of a group discussion. It's just basically your immediate reaction and your immediate sensed feeling of what's going on with you when exposed to these ideas. And after a person finishes, we leave a bit of time for that to settle in, and the next person that wants to talk, whomever that might be, unmutes themselves. The signal is that the person that finishes talking will mute themselves. So I finish talking, I mute myself. Only then can someone unmute and start speaking. So it really means that we leave space between speakers, and it's a very spacious dialogue that can go in any direction. I mean, there's no need to like focus it in one direction or another. So basically what the group comes up and brings new ideas from these seeds. Do you guys have any questions on the container, on the rules for dialogue? Okay. So, Joanne, I guess you can start if you like.
Yeah, I was fielding some messages on Facebook, so 2 people just asked me for the link, so I think we'll have a few others joining, but we'll just see how it goes. I'll set this to about 5 or 6 minutes and try to stick to it. What I wanted to say by way of introduction is actually what that Bardo experience was for me in that ayahuasca journey, and the way in which it has repeated many times in breathwork, in meditations, and in daily life. In this journey, what I saw as the first stage of the Bardo experience is a demand for recapitulation. What this recapitulation means is to view your life, and specifically a relationship in your life that has caused you a lot of pain, something that seems very traumatic, and to shift the assemblage point, which is the prism through which we perceive the world and our place in it. So I wanted to give an example of what this recapitulation meant for me in terms of my relationship with my father. I had a very abusive relationship during my childhood and adolescence. My father was a very judgmental, very violent person who put others down. And at the very end of his life, he had a stroke, and he seemed to change overnight. He was like a small child and full of love, and he used to call me his treasure, and I didn't know who this person was. This was not at all my experience during childhood. After he died, I had a vision of him in a meditation in which I thanked him for this incredible transformation that he went through in life. And in this vision, in this meditation, what he answered was, there was never any transformation. I only played the part you asked me to play, which was a real mindfuck that put it into perspective that many of the things that we experience in life as woundings, as painful experiences on a higher level, our soul, our spirit has called for them into our life so that we can learn specific lessons. So once we go through this recapitulation, that past doesn't, you don't actually change the past, but you change the weight that it has, the emotional resonance that it has. So this recapitulation is a first stage. A life review is a second stage, which many people who talk about near-death experiences highlight, that it's almost like your whole life is passing before you. And you see all of these experiences, all of the mistakes and the feelings of loss and of grief, and you see them all passing, flashing before you. What this life review is in a sense recapitulation turned back on yourself, so that you can see that when you have hurt other people, when you have been in a sense the perpetrator, it was because you had not yet learned the lesson, in a real sense because you did not know what you were doing. And I had this experience, to give an example, in the relationship with my parents before they died. My father was very ill and my mother had Alzheimer's, and I felt like I could not take care of them, so I gave them to somebody else. And to be fully honest and naked in this space, I actually wished for them to die because it was too much for me. And what I saw is this moment, you know, this greatest guilt that I carried in my life, that I actually wished for the people who brought me into existence to die so that I could be relieved. I saw that that was also just part of me not having yet learned the lesson, that from the point of view of separation, you always have, you know, you always kill the other in a sense. You always have this attack thought or action directed towards them because you have your desires, they have theirs, you have your needs. And as long as we view that separation in place, it cannot be otherwise. It cannot be that you embrace the other through love as yourself. So I saw that even this worst experience in my life that I had the most guilt for was actually something that I needed to learn this insight into what separation means and what its effects are. So the life review leaves you with the sense that everything that has been part of your life is actually fine. It's complete as it is. And it leads to a kind of total acceptance, at least in my experience. And the third part is this touching the void. I don't know how to call it in any other way. It's a feeling of dissolution. For me, it was like my body was coming apart into different molecules and fractals. And I had a very intense fear that kept it very tight. I was afraid to just let go into the experience. Once I did let go into that experience and that fear, it was like I was riding the drive itself, and it was this intense speed that the more that I let go into, it felt like it wasn't something fearful, but that I was dissolving into this vast thing, that I was in a sense becoming this void. And I was this vast like ball of light, and all of these experiences, all the sensations, all of the emotions were just passing through me. And I was able to just allow them to flow through me with a kind of equanimity, that it's all the same. Whatever I'm feeling, I can just let it all be. And my experience from that third stage was the recognition that if you're willing to touch that void, to go into the most extreme feeling of loss, it will shift on its own, and it will become this greatest bliss of not resisting anything and allowing everything to just flow through, which is the point for me that I fell out of time into a kind of eternity. So that was what the Bardo experience was for me, and I wanted to share it just to see how it resonates with your own experience, even if it didn't happen in an ayahuasca journey. Maybe it happened in a meditation or in a life crisis. So I think I forgot to count. I think I've been over my 6 minutes, so I'll stop now and ask Georgia to intervene.
Yeah. what comes up for me is a very strong notion of what is. And for me, it's always been a transitional state, a state between states, a state that leads to other states. And when I approach that notion, I get the image of the Bardo of life, where this moment, which is a transitional moment between death, is Bardo. Dreams, the dream state is a Bardo state. It's a transitional state between being awake, falling asleep, and waking up in the morning again. The meditative state is a Bardo state. It's an in-between state. I'm no longer in the usual daily life, but I haven't yet left the usual daily life behind. So there is the Bardo of meditation. Whenever I sit in silence, I feel that Bardo opening up. Of course, there's also the Bardo of the moment of death, which is most present in the Tibetan teachings, where I'm going through the process of dying, but I'm not dead yet, nor am I alive yet. And that's a very because many things actually happen in that Bardo. And there's the Bardo of the luminosity at the moment of death, or the Bardo of the clear light, which is this Bardo of leaving the body behind and experiencing these visions. At least that's how they are described in the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, or the Tibetan book of living in the Bardo. So we see that the Bardo has quite a large number of meanings, and it's quite general, especially when we begin to feel that this moment is itself a transitional state, a Bardo, not only between birth and death, but between the last moment and the next moment. We could add the Bardo of Zoom, the Bardo of cyberspace, if you would like, which itself is sort of a in-between space. And in the past few years, I've been convinced there's another very strong Bardo that's been open for a few thousand years, but it's being opened now in the West more than anywhere else, which is the Bardo, which has its own specific flavor, the Bardo of psychedelics. So whether it's the chacruna or psilocybin or lysergic, it's a Bardo opened up by these plant molecules, let's call them. So the moment I began to see the psychedelic trip as a opening of a Bardo, things began to shift. And what do I? Once psychedelics are seen as opening up a Bardo, we begin to feel, at least I did the first time I did the chacruna, maybe about 25 years ago, and the only time I did the chacruna in Peru, that oh, this is what it feels like to be poisoned. This is like what it feels to be dying immediately. I knew something in the body was rejecting completely this substance. Psilocybin a few years later, the same thing. Poison mushrooms. I mean, I knew I had been poisoned. Oh, this is what death feels like. My favorite material, lysergic, in some respects, quite a real Bardo. Each differ in tonality, but each open up this Bardo of death. So what struck me is the idea that the high dose psychedelic experience can be approached as the practice of conscious dying. And the moment it's approached as the practice of conscious dying, we have a chance. Joanne was alluding to earlier, deep fear. And I think the deepest fear, at least for me, but I think in society as a whole, as we're approaching this topic, and as we're advancing into really quite unknown territory, is the fear of dissolution, the fear of death. It is this fear that's the experience that's most repressed in our system. We don't talk about death. It's taboo to mention death. Death is like hidden away somewhere. Open us up to God consciousness, cosmic awareness, bliss, love, all that. Yes, it's true. They can do that, but the primary mechanism is through taking us through the experience of death and rebirth. And we forget that to have rebirth and to have the bliss and the opening, we have to experience death. And that's the unpleasant part, because nobody wants to go through that willingly. And for most of forego that experience and just have the bliss. For me, the big teaching continues to be that to have any kind of true opening, you have to go through the death process as being alive. And this, again, it's nothing new. It's been with us for thousands of years. I think we might be at the point where we can take this on board.
So what we will do is we will each, I and Georgia, come back with a short 3-minute interaction before opening it up. And what I wanted to follow up on this, what struck me in what you said is the in-between. The in-between as a suspension. Because very often in these journeys, I would feel like I was traveling in this kind of pure velocity. It was like so much speed that it was completely frightening. And it was almost like then I was sucked out and I was suspended in a kind of limbo. And I think this suspension is an important metaphor for the psychedelic experience, also for what happens in breathwork and meditation. It's because in that suspension, desire itself is suspended. It feels like there is no time. And of course, if there is no time, there is no desire, because desire is always, grasping for that future moment, for the promise of the fulfillment, of the satisfaction. And when you get sucked out of the speed, which is in essence the agitation of life itself, we were talking earlier about the death drive as it's been formulated by Freud and Lacan and Zizek and others. The death drive is actually this agitation that seeks to perpetuate its own loss, that seeks to perpetuate this feeling of never getting what you want. And that is what's the fear behind desire. Is this fear that you're never getting the thing that you want. And if you're willing to meet that fear, to say, okay, fuck it, I'm not gonna meet my desire. The thing that I want is always going to be in perpetuum outside. It's, I can never get it, because the very experience of coming face to face with this fundamental loss, it is what is actually propelling us on the spiritual journey. So it's like there's a higher part of us that is orchestrating all of these feelings of loss, of failure, of not meeting what it is that you seem to be going after, because it's in those crashes, in those losses, that you fall into the in-between. And that desire becomes suspended. And when you're in that in-between, what you learn, whether it's through the psychedelic experience or in meditation, is just to be. You're no longer in becoming, you're in being. And that's where this, really meeting the appreciation of whatever is happening in the moment, whatever sound is passing through, whatever experience is passing through, this feeling like I need do nothing. If the teachings from the Course in Miracles resonate with any of you, I need do nothing. And I think that's what the in-between is. You fall out of this constant striving and seeking for the next thing into this relaxation of, fuck, I need do nothing. I can just be. And I think that is the essence of the Bardo experience, is that, this wheel of desire chasing its own tail, which is the wheel of karma, is suspended and it just falls through. And some people have referred to this in between as a gap. For me, it feels like I'm being sucked out of something into something else. But I think that experience of the in between, of the suspension of desire, is key to this experience of coming face to face with that loss, not seeking anything, not seeking any transformation, allowing everything to be, and then actually the shift, the transformation happens on its own. So that is the magic of how the alchemy of change works. It's when you stop seeking, it's when you go into that in-between and you suspend the desire, it actually fulfills itself, because you're no longer trying to push from behind the scenes. So that's what the reflection made me think of and what I wanted to share. So I will let you, Georgia, take over for another few minutes and see if you have a comeback.
Yes. The Bardo certainly opens up the possibility to unbind. The Bardo certainly opens up the possibility to loosen constraints and loosen and once constraints are loosened, and once the boundaries begin to dissipate, there's always the possibility for glimpses of freedom and glimpses of true and real opening. But like everything else, with the light, we also have to look at the dark, because the psychedelic experience isn't just light and unbinding. It's also darkness. It's dissolution and death. And my take is that we have to go through the dissolution and death in order to be able to experience the unbinding. And when I say that, I also mean that we have to go through the experience of old karmas, something Joanne also had. Which means that we are exposing ourselves to another danger, because old karma works on repetition. So the moment I open up the box of old karmas, the energy of old karmas will manifest itself as the desire to repeat. So just the fact that I open up the karmic box and I reveal that energy doesn't mean that the energy is just going to dissolve. No, the energy will want to remanifest. So together with the and opening, the psychedelic experience, as any experience, increases the possibility of re-traumatizing and re-imprinting. So for most people that have no experience with, or very little experience with psychedelics, the psychedelics will re-imprint old traumas. It will make them even stronger, even more prominent. And there's people that have been doing psychedelics for 20, 30, 50 years, their whole lives, and they're just getting more and more fried. I knew people like that in the US. So just the fact that we have the possibility to loosen, the boundaries are being able to dissipate, is also a danger, because the repressed material will come up and will take over consciousness. And all of us who have done psychedelics have that experience where we're taken over by some kind of a phenomenon, some kind of an energy phenomenon. So it's nice to keep both things in perspective, because that will give us the hint of where the path is.
Do you want to give a bit of instruction again for how people proceed?
Yeah, now we'll have, now we consider the space open. So whoever wants to share, again, it's not question and answers, it's sharing and felt experience. Just unmute yourself, and when you are finished, mute yourself again.
And we'll try to keep it to about 3 minutes. And again, the focus is on what you're feeling, what you're sensing, what you're thinking in the moment. So it's not questions addressed to us to answer in the future, or to the other people to answer in the future. It's your own reflections. So I will unmute myself as well and wait.
So, I find it quite interesting what George has just said about re-imprinting the traumas. From my experience, when I reach a place where there is no more time, I also feel that the universe is friendly with me and I can interact with it and it listens to me. And that's a moment when I pay attention to what's happening, to all the hints, to all the games my mind is playing, and then I go back in my heart. And whenever I do that, I feel like I'm uncovering layers from that particular subject or trauma. So what George just said made me think if I'm doing something good or if I'm just re-imprinting the trauma in my field or in my awareness. So yeah, this is where I am right now. Thank you.
Okay, so for me, the experience with death as it is as a process happened since I was a child, with animals and later in life with people that were near me. And it actually made a click last year when my grandmother died, because she died right in front of me, and at some point she didn't breathe anymore. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And she passed away peacefully. And after this experience, I started to be drawn to different areas to explore. And I felt like I've died a couple of times during this period of time. Sometimes I was very conscious about it, just like Joanne said, because it was during ceremony and I felt the shivers and I knew, okay, now I'm dying. Everything is fine. We'll see where it takes me. So I kind of comforted myself. But what I perceived the most, the Bardo, is how my life is changing and how, for example, in this particular moment, I feel the need to make certain changes in my life in order to be more authentic and in order to deal with a sensation of overwhelming. So these days, my personal Bardo is about being overwhelmed of everything and just wanting to go back to center and figuring out how to do that. And doing things that resonate with me and start saying no more. So, thank you.
There's something that's coming up for me tied to doing these groups in the past, where I'm realizing for the nth time that it's not really that easy to speak in a group setting, especially when we know that everyone else is listening. But it's a safe space, and although it takes courage, I think it could be very strong practice where it doesn't matter so much what we say, but it matters more how we say it.
Well, then I'm gonna gently tell you that at the age of 4, I died. Apparently for about 45 minutes, according to my mom. I don't think that's possible. But anyway, I was out and I was too young to process what was going on, of course. But I was on the ceiling. I was looking at my mom. I could see her back. She was over me, pulling my, I don't know, limbs. And then something black, and then something red, and then nothing. So that was the closest encounter with the lady. And it wasn't bad at all. I can tell you that very rarely after that was I that happy. It was the happiest happiness I could ever experience. Probably seeing my daughter for the first time after giving birth to her, it was something similar, but I'm making it up for sure. It was floating in a cloud, happy. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't, I don't know, everything was muffled, sort of. And I got electrocuted. That's how it happened. So basically, I break danced for some time, and then they pulled me out of there, and then I died. I had, it's called like a clinical death or something. I don't know how do you collapse. How do you say that in English? Clinical death? Muerte clínica? Yeah. So, don't know. That was it. And I still am fearful of a lot of things. It didn't cure anything. And I'm still following George everywhere.
Okay, I guess I'll take a go at this. And I'm this everything that's been said is just there's just a lot of thoughts going around. And the concept of the Bardo is a little new to me, or at least the term is. But I think that I relate to it a lot in a physical sense, or at an energetic level. I don't have any experience with psychedelics or anything death related, or even very few dream related occurrences, really. But I feel as though, at least in my experience, that life has almost felt like an ocean, and where it as the waves kind of begin out in the middle of the ocean, and they're just kind of smooth and calming. But as they approach the shore, the swells get bigger and bigger as they approach the shore. And then I feel like at a certain event in my life, it just kind of crested and came crashing down on itself. And the whole concept of what I thought was real just got flipped on its head. And that was probably a couple of years ago. And I kind of feel like I'm in this state now where I'm beginning to kind of come on shore, where the waters kind of, they just passively spread out onto the beach. And, but still in such a confusing sort of way that I'm not really sure what is what. And I feel like the process that's been spoken of is, I feel like I'm going through it, but almost on an unconscious level. Even though I can consciously see the results, and some of the concerns about the dark side or the negative side is always kind of persuade me from taking psychedelics or something like that a little bit further, just because it never really intuitively felt right. That it was kind of always a, this isn't the way for you. And I don't know if there is a way. I don't know if for each person it's different. But I feel like I'm getting the same results, taking a sort of a different path. And so I don't know if that's relatable or if I'm even speaking on the same subject, but there it is.
Yeah, since Georgia reminded me at the beginning that we are just part of the conversation, I would also um, like to say something in response. This experience of feeling that whatever was real has been flipped, and it's like the hangman in the tarot. It's like all of a sudden everything seems upside down, and it's very confusing, and you don't know how to make sense of life anymore because the paradigm, the assemblage point, to use Castaneda's term again, the prism through which you have viewed reality, um, has shifted so radically that it's not possible to go back to where you were before. And a lot of people experience confusion when this, when this is flipped around, when that assemblage point, which was maybe here, flips and it's somewhere else. All of a sudden you don't know how to encounter life as it was and yourself as you were. And that's not the paradigmatic psychedelic experience. Life itself does that to you. And that is, in a way, the purpose of many of life's big crashes and tragedies, is, that it basically shatters that prism through which you've perceived the world. So having the rug pulled out from under you, for my father who never did psychedelics, like having the stroke and all of a sudden having his life turned upside down, basically crashed his operating system. And that is how Terence McKenna talks about psychedelics. They crash your operating system. So I think it's two different paths. One is, you can choose the psychedelic route, and not even that, the route of, going to do breath work or very intense meditation as a way of consciously choosing that Bardo experience, that death experience, which will be so intense that basically it will flip your world and your view upside down. It will bring that crash, that near death experience. So that's a way of entering into it consciously, but you don't have to set the intention, next week I go to ceremony, tomorrow I do breath work, I'm going to encounter the void, because life will do that anyway. So the way in which I see these practices, which include psychedelics and breath work and meditation and many others as well, is that it's an acceleration. It's a way of setting the intention of, I'm willing to go on this road and I'm going to go there faster. So it's just different ways that you get pulled into that experience, which is essentially an experience of the operating system crashing and having to reinvent it all. And I think that experience of confusion, which is what Alexandra was talking about, the overwhelm. It's like everything is, coming from all of these different sides. I don't know how to handle it. Fuck, what do I do? So that does happen in the psychedelic experience just because it's in this mad rush, but life does that to you anyway. And I feel that sense of overwhelm, on a weekly basis, not on a daily basis, but very often. And, that's what I work with in meditation. How can you just be with that overwhelm and saying, okay, yeah, it's like, oh, I don't have access to the bank. All of this other shit is going wrong. So when you feel like all of these things in your life are crashing, I think it's that experience of the overwhelm that brings you into the Bardo, because it feels like it's too much. I can't handle it. And, the only thing you can do is actually surrender to the flow of all of that. And when you surrender into that flow, from my own experience, that's when you hit that liminal state of the in-between. And desire itself gets suspended and you fall into this, okay, I give up, I give in, I need to do nothing. And life itself, I think, brings you there. So certain experiences may bring you there more quickly, but life itself is the ultimate master and guide that brings you to that threshold, I think.
That's interesting for me. Can you hear me? Yeah, I haven't had any operating system crashes in my life, and I haven't taken psychedelic drugs. I have done a couple of breathwork sessions with you, Joanne. Um, and yeah, I have this desire to make it happen faster. What I am doing is a gradual, I'm on the path of the diamond approach, which is basically inquiring into your felt sense of your experience, into the emotions that you don't want to feel, and just staying with that. And that has been transformational for the moment or for a couple of days, but then I found myself falling back into my old ego patterns again. And I'm in my late 70s already, and I never took psychedelic drugs when I was younger for various reasons. And I I feel like I would like to do it just to kind of speed up the process. I've done some trauma work, and I don't know what would come up, but the situation is not presenting itself. So I'm just trusting that if it's right for me, I've done a couple of inquiries. I've spoken to a couple of people that have access to psilocybin mushrooms, and but somehow it doesn't feel right. So I'm just trusting that the opportunity will arise if it's something that I'm meant to do. And I don't always feel that way, but at this moment, that just came to me, that if it's what I'm meant to do, the situation will arise and present itself, and I will do it, and it will be a useful experience. So this is all very interesting, just hearing about the various ways that we can let go of our ego identity and drop into that state of everything is fine the way it is, which I have been experiencing more and more. But it's not exactly the same as feeling like I'm not in life or not in death. But it is what it is, and it's a very satisfying state to be in. Just everything is fine, just the way it is, and just to drop down into my belly and let go of busy mind and just feel present with what's happening in me and everything around me, and it's not necessarily separate, just a feeling of connection. So that's what I can share at this moment.
One thing that I can notice now is that I find it difficult to put in words the experience, because when I attempt to relate to this, I'm not very familiar with the Bardo term, but if I consider it like a transitional space that could happen during one's lifetime, or I mean, you getting closer to the void, to some sort of void experience that you can reach through different practices that were mentioned here, or through psychedelic. One thing is that I have the impression that putting this in language would limit it somehow, that the experience is so rich that the language would frame it. And when I attempt to just name something out of it, it will meanwhile transform that much that I can hardly touch the surface of it. And I can compare at least two different states. One is one that is like some sort of tunnel vision, where I am driven by the desire that Joanne mentioned, where all my attention and my conscious is I have to reach something, and it's a lot of noise, and this happens a lot in my mind. While on the other side, this other experience that we are talking about is so much rich, and it's so much quiet and peace and calm in my mind, while the whole experience is so synergetic and addresses all my senses, and all these other possibilities are possible. And me looking at space, time, and different ways of looking at myself and others, and my relationship with others and life, it becomes so much richer. I'll stop here.
We can't hear you, Manuela.
Manuela, nu te auzim.
Haideți să încercăm fără căști. I will try again now. Is it possible? Ok, atunci fără căști. I agree with almost what was said before. In my opinion, according to my experience, I saw that it's very important to have to find somehow an equilibrium, a balance. To find the balance between on one hand, there are our experiences, our inner experiences, and our daily life. If we can find this balance, then I think we can go further with our inner experiences. If it's not possible to change our life according to them, if it's not possible to how to say, to grow our life, our daily life together with our inner experiences, then I don't know if it is right to dream about more inner experiences. I had only once a very easy, a very light attempt of psychedelics. It was very beautiful and very interesting. But it was not my way. It was too quick for me. And then I thought, if I do it my way, then I will do it slowlier. I will not make such big steps, but there are my steps. And when I will be prepared, and if I will try again later, maybe I will be really prepared to go further and to make bigger steps. I wanted to say something about this Bardo experience. I really find it everywhere. I really find it everywhere. Also, you mentioned it, very many possibilities, but really this in between state, I think this is a switch in our brain, and my inner question is how we can live our daily life in such a way, to be prepared always to make this step. to make this step, to live in between, without yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to concentrate now because everybody is around me. But but really, these Bardo experiences, I find it everywhere. Even now in the car, if we are all driving and there are my children and my husband and every but what I find the most interesting point in this Bardo experience is how I can take my how to say, my memories or my my reflections, how I can take my reflections into that between state, how I can take my daily reflections into that in between state, if they are necessary or not, how I can take my experiences from the daily life to enrich the other part of my life. And I will stop here.
I remember being in the States in the mid 80s when the government declares officially the beginning of the war on drugs. Of course, we were in college and had access to basically and testing everything you could want. And the scheduling of psychedelics together with the really heavy drugs, I mean, the really heavy narcotics. And in a way, demonizing completely that experience as being careless, damaging. You do it enough times in New York State, you can be declared insane, and all kinds of things that were circulating in the mass culture. Shortly thereafter, many of us just left the psychedelics behind because the context was off. The big surprise was that in the early 2000s, the materials are making a big comeback, and there's the usual U-turn, 180 degrees U-turn, and now they're being touted as miracle medicine. Okay, it will cure this, depression, cosmic consciousness, it will give you the experience of God, alcoholism, just take some LSD and then we'll cure that in the therapeutic setting. PTSD, no problem, we have MDMA for you. You know, the psychedelics are really good. And anyone who remembers Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs, and it will be very surprised at this 180-degree turnaround and realize that both positions are misleading. Yeah, the psychedelics certainly weren't demonic, and they're certainly not the cure for everything, and certainly not for everyone. And what I'm realizing even more now that we put these ideas together, the Bardo and the psychedelics, that maybe the one way, not the way, but one way to approach them is through the notion of the Bardo. And the Tibetans are very notion of the Bardo. And indeed, the first Bardo that you get exposed in the Tibetan teachings is the Bardo of life. The momentary living and dying and living and dying from moment to moment, from experience to experience, from relationship to relationship, from case to case, from day to day, from night to night, etc., etc. And from that, the amazing amount of universes that get opened as Bardo experience, as meditation, as dream, and of course, as psychedelics. So what makes, for me, the psychedelics interesting is that experience in a big way. And what allows me to keep some semblance of sanity in the psychedelic experience is the constant awareness of death, that this is really dying. And in some respects, anyone who's done a chakruna and psilocybin will realize that there is a lot of truth to that. In a way, the body cannot work with these molecules. It needs to throw them out. So the experience of being poisoned is real. Of course, we don't die because the plants are chosen in such a way as to spare us the physical death, but nonetheless, at some level, the organism is being poisoned. So the experience of death is quite real. So what comes up for me is as long as we have the presence of death by our side, and again, this is nothing new. It's in the old texts, it's in the new texts, it's in the New Age, it's in Castaneda. But again, because death has been made taboo and we choose to disregard it, we make the mistake of falling into the trap of seeking happiness and bliss. And there's a whole industry that pushes happiness on us at all kinds of workshops and books and products that we can buy to be happy. And of course, those of us that have been around the block a few times know they're just marketing ploys. There's no happiness to be found through workshops or books or any kind of experience. The only thing that we find is a temporary relief from our concerns, and the concern that we have is the main concern is bodily death. So we can escape that anxiety by turning our attention to some other field, which, yeah, okay, it's something we usually do. Coming back experience, because it amplifies the Bardo experience, it allows the possibility to unbind, but it's also fraught with as much danger because it also opens the possibility for re-traumatizing and re-imprinting. So it's not guaranteed that a psychedelic experience will give us the opening we're looking for. Nothing's guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that the next moment will be the next moment that we're looking for. But what I'm suggesting is that one way perhaps to proceed is by acknowledging the presence of death each moment of our lives. And this is, I feel, a true path. It's the shamanic path, the true shamanic path, not the neo-shamanic, not the feel-good singing and playing nice songs on the guitar. It's the courage to open to the possibility of dissolution that leads to unbinding and freedom.
Yeah, I wanted to say also that the introduction was not meant to be kind of advertising for psychedelics, and if anything, in my personal life, I would caution against them. My experience in facilitating retreats was that more than half the people were really not prepared. They were either um, seeking desperately some cure, some answer to their problems, or coming with the feeling of, they've tried some things that were strong and they really wanted to get, like the strongest thing, which was ayahuasca. Um, and seeing it also in myself, even though I am prepared, that there is this, I think that's the real danger, not the danger of re-traumatizing. The danger of re-traumatizing is because people are not approaching um, the experience with sufficient background, with sufficient practice. So if you think of in other traditions in which people had psychedelic experiences as initiations after they had been through a long kind of schooling of discipline, it was the last stage. It was after they had learned to master attention and, to be in the now, to say yes to whatever is, even if there were difficult experiences. So I think that the re-traumatizing is because people do not have that preparation of, I can just be with it and say yes and not freak out. So that's part of the re-traumatizing. The other danger is that people who have had a taste of it are seeking it as the final thing, like, okay, this is going to finally crash the ego. This is going to get me to that next stage that I want to get to. So even the psychedelic experience, even if and even because it is promising that taste of the Bardo, is still on that cycle of desire. Like, okay, it's going to be the next thing. And if I do this, if I do that ayahuasca trip, it's going to like completely blow me out of the water and propel me into enlightenment. I think that is the real danger, that people are looking to it as a kind of, solution, as a satisfaction of that final desire, like finally meeting the void and coming back transformed. And what happens when you meet the void? Well, some people come back transformed and some don't. And that really depends on the way that they're able to integrate the experience and the preparation that they have had before going into that experience. So it's not so much to relate to something that Manuela said. It's not so much of bringing your everyday experiences to the in-between of the Bardo state. How do you bring that experience of the Bardo state back into ordinary life? And that is really the fourth stage from my own feeling, from my own experience, which I didn't mention, the reintegration. And without that, the experience can often be lost. So how do you integrate this experience of having had the recapitulation and seeing, that the people who you've blamed for all of the shit in your life actually are off the hook, they're innocent? How do you encounter people who are hurting you in the present moment and saying, yeah, okay, I can understand that this is part of an experience I have called forth? How do you, when you're stuck in this feeling of, oh shit, I feel overwhelmed, I can't handle it, I'm always quitting at the last moment, how do you reconcile that with the acceptance that you saw for your whole life in those higher visions? How do you bring that experience of just being in the moment and being in the flow and just so blissful and so allowing everything into daily life when you have, children yelling at you, traffic jams? And I think that is the real test. How do you integrate that experience? And for me, the integration is the real journey. It's not the psychedelic journey. It's not the breathwork journey. It's not even the groovy meditations I can have every day. It's, how do I deal with that Joe Schmo on the street that just insulted me without getting triggered? And I think that's, what we bring back from the experience. And it's not, sometimes in these Bardo experiences, we reach very high vibrational states of, I don't know, unconditional love, of peace. How do you maintain that when you have, this overwhelm of all of this daily craziness and bullshit that is coming back into your life? And for me, the lesson has been to see that, on the one level, I'm here, I'm in the here and now, I'm dealing with, you know, the person at the bank being an asshole and, you know, just setting up all of this stuff for me that is making things difficult. And on the other hand, you know, I'm somewhere else. I'm in between those dimensions. I have one foot in one and one foot in the other. And from the foot that I have in the other, it's all bullshit. Like all of these, we get so upset over these small details. And when you see it from the perspective of, you know, I've encountered death, you know, I faced like the worst dissolution. And from that point of view, all of the daily tribulations of life are kind of inconsequential. So if you can keep, you know, one foot in one and keep one foot in the other, it's actually bringing the memory of that Bardo experience into life. And if you can have one foot in one and one foot in the Bardo, the stuff that is happening in life that seems so overwhelming and so agitated, it just becomes more inconsequential. Okay, this is just part of the flow. I can let the person at the bank be what they are. I can let this person in my life that is annoying the hell out of me just be what they are. It's part of the experience. It's part of the roller coaster. So I can go through the roller coaster, but at the same time, I can see it almost as if I'm out here from the ceiling looking down at me saying, okay, it's like, it's a joke. It's, you know, it's really inconsequential. I'm making a big drama out of nothing. And that is the way in which personally I have worked with that integration. It's to remind myself of that memory. And that memory is what allows me to keep one foot in the daily life and one foot in this transcendent experience. And if you can navigate between one and the other, the things in daily life suddenly don't seem so big or so dramatic. They just become kind of inconsequential.
I wanted to add a little bit to that because that really resonated along with what you, one of the first things that you said, Joanne, about when your dad said, you know, I was just playing the role that you needed me to play or you asked me to play, something like that, something to that extent. And this is, from my personal experience, I guess, one of the most profound moments for me that really just got my head going in a different direction from just constant suffering and going in circles was this, something just came over me and just said, you are responsible for all of this. This is all your idea. And I don't know why that I knew that that was right, but it was. And as part of that, I began to take a different approach and look at each situation that came up, no matter what it was, or each past thought or whatever it may be, and ask, why did I do this? Why would I do this? Why would I create this kind of a suffering? And from that moment on, things just began to make sense and come together. It was an earnest seeking, I think, and a period where I just stopped judging a situation as either good or bad, and as something, as a feeling would come up of anger or whatever, or you wanted to lash out back or get back at this or that, to just stop and say, you know, thank you. What are you trying to teach me? What are you here for? Why has this experience come about? And at first it seems a little bit crazy, because it doesn't seem like it would work. But it's a part of, you mentioned A Course in Miracles, but a lot of that was just reprogramming your mind and reprogramming your habits to do certain things. And after a while, you just get in the habit of processing things as they come at you, and it happens really quickly. Not in the beginning, it doesn't. In the beginning, you just don't want to have anything to do with it. You don't want to hear it. It's just all forms of resistance. And so we just keep repeating these same experiences. We keep getting mad at the same thing because we're not accepting it. We're not realizing that it's there, much because we put it there to try to get our attention or teach us something about ourselves. For me, the big thing was just acceptance. It was just, these things are not bad. They are, or good or bad. They're just teachers. And the people that you run into in life, they're just mirroring what you're putting out there, and they're there to teach you. and just it's this judgment that prevents us, our preconceived ideas or whatever, that's blocking these new things from breaking things open inside of us that we don't even know are there. And anyways, okay, that's it. I think that it's just a matter of kind of a responsibility mixed with acceptance, mixed with non-resistance, and just being thankful for whatever comes and forget the appearance of it. Look beyond that appearance and know that there's something underneath that is working a greater purpose.
I would like to share one experience. It happened some years ago. It was a state I was feeling how my life goes out from my body. Before that, I did not have a very special and empowered relationship with my husband, and I was already ready to leave him. But after that experience, when I returned home, I realized that the solution is not breaking up a relationship, but the solution is to embrace in a very conscious way that relationship. If you will, now I thought in that way that if I break up that relationship, I will find again another obstacle in my life, maybe a similar relationship or not, but I will find again that obstacle. And if I will be ready to accept it and to embrace it, and to work with it, then it will change. And it really happened like that. That it changed very, very much my relationship with my husband. And now I feel that it's a conscious relationship, because at the very beginning we made some vows that till life and death. And when I reached that moment of death, I consider that I respected what I promised, and I was free to choose. And when I was free to choose, I chose again to remain with him in order to strengthen myself in this relationship and not to have that obstacle again. This is one example, but this is how I understand to bring our understandings from Bardo to our daily life relationships.
I resonated deeply with the concept of being with one foot in one world and another foot in the 3D world, facing all the challenges we need to face every day and so on. But my challenge sometimes goes a bit deeper in the sense that when I have to look at certain things, whether they're work related or I don't know, things that I need to do, I sometimes find it difficult to find my motivation or to take those things seriously. Things like numbers or objectives without clarity. Let's do this because it's good that we do this, you know, that kind of approach, this mindless working to get a salary, but without a understanding of what you're actually doing with your work. And this is something that is sitting with me for the past year and a half, after I have been shook up by an experience with the legal system that involved plant medicine. So somehow I was living a life which was more in the the uh, the other world, not the 3D world. And something very strong shook me and brought me back here to be here for myself, but also for my family. And now I have moments when I feel deeply grounded and I do the work that is required in this reality. But sometimes I find it difficult to understand why am I doing it, or what is the purpose of all this nonsense and numbers, and that's a moment when I just call my friends and say, okay, let's go together, let's make a bonfire and then just play some drums and forget about all this bullshit. But I really want to know how to master both worlds, because it seems to be necessary for this human experience to to be a player in both worlds. Thank you.
Okay. So we've been going on for a bit over an hour, and personally, I feel the discussion was very fruitful. Um, we can unmute if we feel like. If there's anything else anyone wants to say in closing, um, this would be the time.
I will
I'll
say
just say
something.
thank you to everybody for doing this, for being open, vulnerable. That's pretty hard to do sometimes. So I know I learned a pretty good bit, and also related to a lot of it. And that just knowing that you're not the only one that's trying to figure this out or sort through certain things, different aspects of it. I'm thankful for it. So thanks, everybody.
Great.
I wanted to say something to Mihai, because I think you already know the answer to your question. Nobody can tell you how to master it, and it's the only thing that we can learn from certain technologies like the psychedelics is what Manuela already said, the thing that is bringing you to that mastery and to that transformation is when you get to the threshold in which you see that in a way, there's no escape possible. There's no escape possible. This is a message I received from my father in vision and meditation after he died, in which I asked, how did this transformation happen to him after his stroke? And he said, I gave up the illusion that there was any choice. There is no escape possible. And this is why certain experiences like the psychedelics can be very strong, because you're in that resistance. Oh shit, I'm in overwhelm. What to do? If you're meditating, you can get up off the cushion. If it's happening in your daily life, I can just ignore it and I can go watch a film. I can distract myself in many other ways, through food, through alcohol, through entertainments. But if you're in that experience, you sense that any resistance is just making it hell. And it's the point where you realize there is no escape possible. Okay, I'm in the shit, what to do now? I just let it flow through me. And I think the more that we bring that, oh shit, there is no escape possible in daily life, the more that we can learn and we can integrate the experience. And that is the ultimate lesson of the Bardo. There is no escape possible. We all get to that point, and certain experiences can highlight that for us, whether it's a life crash, like impending divorce, illness, or psychedelics. But if you get to the point of understanding there is no escape possible, there is no other choice. I either face this or basically that's it. I give up my life. And it's at that moment that you make that leap. I give up, I let all of this higher wisdom come through me and just direct my life. Because on a level of personality, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, really. I keep messing things up. So it's that surrender experience of there is no escape. The choice is an illusion. There is only one choice. And that's also the message of the Course in Miracles. I just embrace everything that comes from the perspective of, what would the highest love in me say to this experience? That's it, that there is no escape. So that's what I feel is essentially the answer to all of the different questions that we've asked. And the psychedelics are just a way of making that clearer, but life itself brings all of us to that point eventually.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm really grateful for this meeting and to be able to speak what I'm feeling. I needed that, so thank you for being here for me and for us.
Thanks for the help with the Zoom.
Sure thing.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being with us. For me, it's always an amazing experience just to we're interacting through the computer. It's nice also to do this live, but we're so far away in different corners of the world, and this is the best thing so far. If you guys need to get in touch with us, you know where to find me or Joanne, and yeah, we can continue the discussion also at another date. Okay. Have a good evening.
Thank you.